At the end of the conversation, we are going to have a question session. If you have a question, please raise your hand or type your question in the chat. I would like to ask you to keep your questions short and to avoid long introductory comments as much as possible, just to make sure there is enough time for everyone. Also, I will stream the event live on Facebook, and I hope it will go smoothly because this is the first time I am doing such thing. So today's meeting is the first event organized as a part of the project launched by the Edmonton branch of the Shevchenko Scientific Society in Canada. The title of the project, Війна та науковці, голоси з України, War and Scholarship Voices from Ukraine. We will have events in English and in Ukrainian as working languages, but to widen the audience, English is preferable. The aim of this project is to establish contacts with scholars in Ukraine or abroad in order to make the experience of war accessible to a larger academic audience. Through the prism of individual human lives, particularly of the academics in or from Ukraine, this initiative aims to show the war as primarily a humanitarian, educational, and cultural catastrophe. And the organizers of the project believe that interviews with the scholars in or from Ukraine will help draw public attention in the West to the war. The project will help disseminate the information about the war and promote relief programs. In addition, such public talks will be a testimony of war experience that in the future will be used to study relevant topics and preserve the memory of this tragic historical events. We will have approximately 1 hour for the conversation, and today's guests are Daphne Richok, PhD student, Indiana University, Ivan Schmatko, PhD student, University of Alberta, Department of Sociology, and Yaroslav Kovalchuk, University of Alberta, Department of History, Classics, and Religious Studies. Currently, they are in Uzhhorod in Ukraine. So dear participants, could you please introduce yourself and tell us about your interests and what you are doing these days? We can start from Dafna, for example.
Sure. Thanks, Larissa, for moderating the event. Thank you for bringing the whole thing together. So hi everyone. I'm so glad to see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. So my name is Daphne Richok. I am a PhD student at IU at Indiana University, Bloomington. And before the war, my research was on HIV epidemic in Ukraine and on the program at Indiana University, Bloomington, and on the programs that exist in Ukraine that were set up as a response to this program. But when the war started, I don't know, I can't think of myself as a researcher anymore, and I think that this part of my identity, I mean, like it's still prominent for me, but it's not like as prominent as some of the other stuff that has come up. And so now together with Ivan, we are volunteering a lot. We are driving around tactical equipment, medical supplies. We are sorting humanitarian aid. We are also fundraising, and we are buying tactical equipment for the territorial defense. And to be honest, I didn't prepare some coherent and logical and eloquent speech because I don't know, when like speaking, this war has been very chaotic and destructive to all of us, to all of our lives, and it changed my perspective on a lot of things, like from the smallest thing that I've been often taking for granted, like, I don't know, like brushing my teas every day and like always having a fresh pair of clothes, I now think of those things as I don't know, as I definitely like underestimated and undervalued such things before. And I don't know, also like this war helped got me started thinking about like a lot of questions, like how our identities sometimes change. And like I have been like pondering the question of when do you become an IDP quite a lot, because I mean, I haven't been to my hometown, I haven't been to my home village for, I don't know, more than a month already. So I guess I'm technically an IDP right now, but at what moment do you really like become an IDP? Is it the moment that you decide to flee? Is it the moment that you start driving your car? Is it the moment that you arrive somewhere and things like that? And I guess I'll stop just like blabbering at my screen now, and I'll give a chance to some other participants to talk. And at the meantime, I'll probably gather some of my thoughts and probably then join the conversation once again. So sorry for this just stream of consciousness.
Лариса, ми тебе не чуємо, здається. I'm sorry.
I'm here. So who will be the next to join? I think maybe Ivan will continue.
Hey everyone, my name is Ivan Schmatko. I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of Alberta, Sociology, as it was mentioned already. To be fair, I wasn't quite sure about what to say. There are so many thoughts, and at the same time, they all seem trivial and obvious. And that's perhaps one of the main things I would like to talk about today, because during the first days and perhaps weeks of this full-scale invasion, one of the main thoughts I had that was not directly related to the war was exactly the thought, like, I wanted to leave academy and never go back to the university, because all these abstract theories, all concepts that I used in my work, all theorizing, seemed extremely unnecessary and useless. I had a deadline for one scholarship about on the 1st of March. I did not apply because I essentially had my application ready, but every time I read it again and again, it seemed absolutely unnecessary. Like everything I suggested, all my research, my whole research proposal seemed to me as as something that doesn't matter at all. The same went to my other academic activities. For example, I had a deadline for an academic article in a British Journal of Criminology that is quite a prestigious journal for criminologists, but at the same time, I did not submit my revise and resubmit article because once again, it seemed extremely useless. I'm very thankful to many people in the academy at the same time. Both my supervisor, professors from my department, editors from the journal, for example, as well, because all of them were extremely understanding and very supportive and still are. But at the same time, this thought was rushing through my head again and again, the thought of not going back to the academy after the war. But then, honestly, it changed quite dramatically, especially after me and Dafna, we started volunteering and driving around with this medical supplies and bulletproof vests and whatnot, medical kits. right now, I feel extremely energized. I don't know if this will continue, but I really want this war to be over. I want to go to have a break and then write again, go back to the academy, restore my normal life, and be extremely productive. I don't know. I'm so energized every time we are stopped on a roadblock somewhere, and there is a guy who starts to check our car for whatever contraband, for illicit cargo, and then in 5 minutes we exchange our phones because after the guy hears that we have bulletproof vests, we are asked like, oh, do you have another one for me? And then we become friends. And this atmosphere of quickly connecting with people around, especially in cities that are closer to the front lines, the atmosphere of solidarity that is going on around here in Ukraine, I don't know, it makes you want this war to be over, and it makes you want to go back to your normal life and live it in full. At least at this time, this is exactly what I'm feeling. And another aspect that I wanted to talk about, my talk is seems to be much more psychologized than Dafna's, is that as a young scholar, I had many fears in academia. Fear of a rejection, obviously, when applying for scholarships or submitting my articles, for example. And right now, all of those fears feel so small and once again irrelevant in comparison to what is going on right now in Ukraine. The fear of to be rejected by some journal feels so trivial and unimportant, and that liberates you in a way, because I'm not sure if I will be that young scholar that is afraid of everything after this war, because I don't know, you just feel like you want to do whatever you do, and then this world can either just accept it or go in the same direction where the Russian warship decided to go. So I think my blubbering is over, and yeah, I'm looking forward to questions.
Yaroslav.
So I guess I'm the last one. Hi, my name is Yaroslav Kovalchuk. I am also a PhD student at the University of Alberta, but in history. The war got me in Ukraine when I finished my archival research. I'm doing my research on Soviet history. And I was supposed to be in Canada actually at this time, but because of some of the bureaucratic Canadian reasons and also some family matters, I had to stay. So yeah, but the war got me in Uzhgorod, which is my hometown, right on the border with Slovakia. And I suppose it's one of the two regions, together with Chernivtsi Oblast or Northern Bukovina, which weren't hit by any Russian missiles. So we are, I would say, being separated by the Carpathians from the rest of Ukraine makes you a safe place. So unlike Dafna and Ivan, my experience of war in Ukraine is different. I cannot say that I'm internally displaced. I actually staying in my home and feeling that you have a resource to help people. Here, having a huge house where you can host people who are leaving the combat zone. So I think that the first thing I found myself useful in the first days of the war, because as Ivan said before, as an academic, you don't feel very useful the moment when rockets, missiles, and all imaginable weapon is flying and shooting. So yeah, it's feeling of powerlessness in a way, especially in the moment, I would say, the first days, because you realize that your skills are useless. This moment, you try to volunteer anywhere possible. I don't know, I tried to donate blood in the first days and I couldn't, because the blood bank was full. And actually something that inspires that people are volunteering on, I don't know, unimaginable scale before. I don't know, I had my experience in 2013 and 14 of Maidan, and there was sort of feeling of solidarity, but you still realize that the segment of society was mobilized and had the connection. But now you have this almost like all national scale of people trying to get humanitarian aid, bulletproof vests from abroad. So something that, I was really surprised and helped me to overcome the shock of the first days. So me as a scholar who ended up in Ukraine, as I said, didn't feel very useful. And actually it's quite hard to find a place to volunteer in Uzhgorod. And as we joke with Ivan and Dafna, you have to bribe someone to volunteer in places or to join the territorial defense, because all the places are full. And, especially, I know, like in Uzhgorod, we have territorial defense, which was full in the first day, and they're basically directing people to neighboring towns because, we should have territorial defense, but why the hell do you need territorial defense in such a remote place from the front line? Who knows? But I guess even there, people trying to find ways to be part of, the resistance. So yeah, the only way I found myself useful, and I think it's not very useful, it's a project that Ivan and Dafna started. So they didn't talk about it, but we are friends, and they contacted me. They started a project, Hello, My Russian Mom, collecting videos of Russian POWs like making English subtitles for them, sort of to present the Western audience, not only sort of the Ukrainian view of the war, but, the Russian prisoners of war and how they see the conflict, translate into English. So yeah, I would say it's a tiny chunk of work, maybe not very useful and not that useful as finding bulletproof vests, but, find something to do. And also I'm right now writing a blog entry based on the Russian POW experience for Swiss University of Neuchâtel, because my friend contacted me and they want something. So, I wouldn't say that being an academic makes you very useful for the war, but you try to find ways to do it. And what Daphne and Ivan doing right now is much more important, because some people ask me like, oh, how Western academia or people from the West can help. And the first and easiest answer is just donate money for the Ukrainian army and for the humanitarian aid, because I would say that's something that would help to not maybe, I don't know, end the war, but not to make it as bad, and that Russians' plan to conquer Ukraine be fulfilled. Some people actually feel a bit jumpy about supporting, armies. That people, they're feeling fine that they'll support, the Red Cross. But for example, today's news that the Red Cross is opening their center in Russia, sort of facilitating the idea that Russians can, especially right now in Mariupol, can move people to Russia, and that Red Cross sort of helping them in that way. So, I mean, I don't want to especially when there is conflict between two states, joining one state, people would feel a bit unsure about it. But maybe for the first in my life, I'm more or less feeling confident that maybe you should support one side, because that's the way to help people not to end up in Russia, which is becoming more and more authoritarian. And for people from Ukraine, it's be more dangerous if they end up there and they are, displaced people. And when international organizations like Red Cross helping that, you start asking questions, are they very helpful? So yes, and I also had one point, because we discussed with my friend who is helping Ukrainian academics to go to the West and find places at the universities. And I said, like, oh, I have a talk this evening. And it's like, oh, there will be people from, I don't know, university administration or can influence, you can tell them a few points about it, how it would be useful, because she helps to write letters for Ukrainian academics, either being from Ukraine, being born in Ukraine and then going to other places in the West, or being Ukrainian-based academics. So her main message was that universities often treat Ukrainian scholars as basically beggars, so you can give them some leftovers. And often those positions, like fellowships that universities provide, they are just, not well thought through, and then just, oh, we are doing something to support Ukrainian scholars, but not providing any help with visas, being very strict with the document, especially, with people who are not often having a good connection with the internet, and saying like, oh, you should upload your documents on our website. Oh, please do everything in PDF or that weird format. So that we require. Universities definitely should be more open-minded in that regard, and also be ready to help people, because the war seems to be longer than expected. When the fellowship is over, to provide, I don't know, at least some assistance taking grants or continue staying there. So, and also often scholars coming with families, so thinking about their kids. If you invite someone, you should check local daycares and schools if they can help. So those things. Yeah, if I'm sort of delivering a message from my friend who is working with this issue, saying, I'll just repeat it once again, that treats Ukrainian scholars as professionals, not as beggars, because other Western institutions basically treat them as, see them as refugees and support them. But if you are a university and you want to, support people, then treat them as professionals and try to provide as much aid as you can, and be, sensitive to their needs. So yeah, I'll end on this note, how I communicated with my friend about how Western universities can help Ukrainian scholars. So yeah.
Thank you, Yaroslav. I also know that the University of Alberta waived the tuition fee for the Ukrainian students. Is it true? Because you, Ivan and Yaroslav are the students at the University of Alberta.
I don't know who, Ivan, you want to talk first about it?
I think UFA is a great example. UFA is a great example of the universities that is concerned about public relations and how it looks, but at the same time actually doesn't do anything, because as far as I understand, this applies only to students who don't have, who can, so they had this vague phrase that only students in need will be part of that program, and no one explained to anyone what does it mean to be in need, and I wasn't sure well, I don't really need help from UFA, but at this time, but because we talked to a journalist from CBC on the matter, I decided to write an email and ask, hey, what does it mean to be in need, and what can you apply somehow or whatever? And the response I got from the email, I wrote to the email that UFA explicitly mentioned as an email you have to write to. And the response I got was, we don't know. And the second part was like, we kind of guess that you have to prove somehow that you have a financial, that you are struggling financially or something like that. So no other explanations were made either publicly. As far as I know, they didn't contact anyone, any Ukrainian students who are either in Canada or in Ukraine. So they just made this public statement that they are helping, that they are ready to help for up to 1 million, but I'm not sure if they spent even $1 on any Ukrainian student. So UFA is a perfect example of university trying to just to make a good public relations move without actually doing anything. I don't know, maybe Yaroslav knows more about it.
No, I just would add that UFA is not only like that. My friend who who helps people to apply for different fellowships says quite often universities do not specify things, and then they just like, we don't want to say that you're not eligible, but maybe you're not, we don't know, something like that. So quite often they do that move. And I mean, it tells quite a lot that many of the things are done for the public, or maybe just not very well thought through policy. So I would say the first thing probably to do is just to ask students what they need and maybe how we can help. So that would be a good example. I know, a good way to approach the issue, because yeah, quite often it's just like, oh, you need help, we can, help, and then there is this vague criteria to ask yourself, like, am I eligible? What to do with it? So yeah, and UFA is not the only university that has this issue.
Dafna, how about Indiana University? What is the situation there?
Well, from what I know, the Office for International Students, they also made scholarships for people, for Ukrainian students, and also like other students of Indiana University who were like stuck in Ukraine, or who were able to leave Ukraine but not able to reach US, something like that. To be honest, like I didn't really explore the options, so I don't really know like point by point what documents you have to have in order to apply. But how it looked from my side, that it was like relatively easy to get that scholarship. But I know that there were also a lot of initiatives by different professors, by different students from Indiana University, that just gathered all together in order to help like more, in order to help raise funds, or to get some equipment, or to get like some tactical and medical supplies to different people and different organizations in Ukraine. Like my supervisor, Sarah Phillips, she has been incredibly active. She's a scholar of disability in Ukraine, and she has been like incredibly active, incredibly helpful, and she has been still working with her participants, whom she knows like for more than a decade. And like my fellow, like people from my cohort, my fellow colleagues, they are also like now mobilizing in order to help us here in Ukraine, and they're helping us with fundraising, like, and informationally, and all the other stuff. So I mean, just like, again, like to sum up all this stuff, so there has been like some institutional initiatives from the IU, and I think that it was like relatively easy to get those money if that was your goal. But on the other side, there was like dozens of like private initiatives of students, of professors, of like on the departmental level, also like helping Ukraine in the way that they can.
Yes, I already mentioned, right, that response from many people from the academy was amazing and still is. Many professors, students, both in UFA and as far as I know from Dafna, as I see in Indiana University, for example, and from other institutions as well, helped a lot, including raising funds for our small-scale operation with Dafna, but also in many other ways, including, I don't know, trying to find shelter for cats, dogs, and people around Europe and whatnot. But I think this stands in huge contrast with institutional response, at least from UFA, from what I see. But privately, I think I'm incredibly inspired by how many professors and students, colleagues helped and addressed us with inquiries about how they can help. Privately, the response was amazing.
Ivan and Dafna, I know that you are very active in volunteering and fundraising, and I also knew from Facebook, from your pages on Facebook, that yesterday or before yesterday you were in Kyiv and you were delivering some help to people who are there. So can you tell us a little bit more about this, what you are doing, helping people?
Okay, so secret uncovered is that we are not in Uzhgorod right now. We are in Kosovo, which is on the way from Lviv to Kyiv, and we are here because actually parents of our good friend are hosting us because we are going to Kyiv right now with a whole bunch of bulletproof vests. Yeah, we didn't plan to do this because it seemed that there was a whole army of volunteers around trying to procure medical kits, helmets, bulletproof vests, and whatnot to the army and territorial defense. Apparently, even in the army, not everyone is well supplied with even basic protection, unfortunately. But territorial defense, it's a really big issue. Those volunteers, right, that rush to get a gun, and that's essentially what they got, right? They got an automatic rifle and nothing else in most of the cases. So we didn't plan to join that army because it seems that it was covered, but somehow the time was passing and people were saying, hey, I'm still standing here with just an automatic rifle and nothing else. And then again and again. And at a certain point, we joined this activity, and we joined it quite late, to be honest. And that's how we started. We essentially, we have a car, Dafna's mother's car, which is funny because she left country just a few days before the 24th. And we are left with the huge Toyota, right. I will not name the car. Anyway, it's a big secret what kind of car it is. But it's a huge car, and we essentially pack it with boxes and drive around, mostly Lviv, Kryvyi Rih, Kyiv. Yes, and we procure some funds and buy mostly this kind of stuff as bulletproof vests, but also medical kits, helmets, whatnot. But we also drive around with medical supplies from two sources. There is it will probably be a surprise to many of you, but there is a large, comparatively relatively large anarchist initiative, and there is an anarchist battalion and few other groups that are fighting on the front lines, and they have an operation going on in Ukraine. So that's one of our sources. They supply, we drive medical stuff, food, and protective equipment with them. There is also, I'm not sure if I can relieve details, probably I can't. There is another source of volunteers that are predominantly bringing medical supplies to Ukraine. So they bring them to Lviv and we pick up and drive them to Kyiv and some satellite towns near Kyiv. And we drive around with whatever we can procure and buy. That's essentially everything we do. And while driving, obviously, your notebook grows exponentially because, as I mentioned, on every checking point on the road, on every, I don't know, third checking point on the road, you start talking with people and then they say, hey, can you procure me this and that? Or on every person that you contact for something. For example, we contacted people to stay in their apartment in Kyiv, and they were friends of our friends of our friends. And then in the end, they said, hey, can you pick up some stuff that we left in Kyiv when we were running away? And we said, sure, yes, of course, we will bring it to you. And then their friends called us, hey, can you pick up another stuff? And then friends of their friends. And this is just a mass of phone calls of the type like, hi, I'm calling you from Sveta. And Sveta got your number from, I don't know, Anton. And you're like, who is Anton? I don't know who Anton is. This is just a madness of constant phone calls. So mostly I'm driving, Dafna is managing this phone notebook and contacts and trying to coordinate everything with all these initiatives and suppliers of the stuff we are buying. So yeah, I think Dafna can say a few words about that.
Yeah, I just wanted to like a brief note that like as Ivan said, well, just the irony is that like all these like volunteering stuff, it essentially like found us at the point in time when we were like, okay, so like nobody really needs us. Like there are enough volunteers in this country. So maybe, I don't know, we can like go back to our academic stuff and whatnot, because when we just came to Uzhgorod and like we were fleeing, like when the war started, we were at my parents' house in Horenka, and I don't know how good you are with the geography of Ukraine, especially this war geography, but this village Horenka, it borders the city of Hostomel, and there was an airport that the Russian troops were particularly interested in. So to say, so on the 24th, we heard like explosions, we saw like helicopters, like warplanes, and we decided that like, well, it's really not the atmosphere that is like conducive to mental health, well-being, and any kind of health. So we quickly boarded my mom's car and we ran away. And then like after running away, we were like, okay, like, so let's make ourselves useful. Okay, like, so we are now staying in Uzhgorod, right? Like Uzhgorod, it's very close to the border. Okay, like there are some news that people on the border, they need drivers and cars to drive stuff around. Okay, like let's call them. We are calling people at the border. Okay, like, so yes, we are two drivers. We have a car. We are ready to drive. And they're like, yeah, you call like 3 hours after this news was published. We already have enough people. Just like leave your names and numbers with us. We will call you back. And of course, they never call you back because they already have enough people to volunteer. And so days were coming by, we were like trying to make ourselves useful. We were calling this number, we were calling that number, and then we were like, okay, like nobody wants us. Like we are academics. We can produce some ideas that are probably like useless and irrelevant at this time. So like, let's go back to our ivory tower or whatever. Let's, I don't know, focus on this like Hello My Russian Mom project and be done with all the other stuff. And then somehow like this volunteering thing like found us, and well, for more than a week now, we are like on the road doing these like mad circles around Ukraine. By the way, I mean, Ukraine is so beautiful. Like there are such magical landscapes. I have never thought about that this way, but now, yeah, driving 1,000 kilometers in that direction and back, yeah, we are also doing like a lot of sightseeing on our way, and it changes your perspective on a lot of things. And I'm now like pledging to myself that after this whole like nightmare ends, I'll definitely go and visit all these places that I was not able to visit before the war, especially like all these places in the southern Ukraine and in the eastern Ukraine that have suffered more than like some places in central Ukraine or in the West.
I have one more question, and then I will open the floor for the audience, and everyone will be able to ask questions. For now, I just would like to ask how Canadians or Ukrainians in Canada can help you with your volunteering projects, or like in general, how we can help Ukrainians and the people and in general, and scholars particularly who are in need now. Anyone can answer?
Okay, I will start from the completely unobvious angle. We picked up a puppy on the gas station. It apparently was thrown away or just got lost. It's an amazing puppy. What you can do is adopt this puppy. I'm not joking. We have a puppy here, and we already have a dog. Our dog is actually staying with Yaroslav in Uzhhorod, because obviously it cannot drive around with us, but travel with us. But we have an amazing puppy. On a more serious note, though, I'm serious, there is a puppy. If you want to adopt a puppy, there is one. But on a more serious note, obviously there are a lot of sources, trustable sources on the internet that have listed all the huge initiatives and bank accounts that you can donate to, starting with the direct account of the Ukrainian army and ending with humanitarian initiatives. Once again, probably don't donate to Red Cross, not the best idea, apparently. But obviously I will not be shy right now, because it's probably not the time to be shy. I will go against all this post-Soviet culture of being shy and not saying it directly into the face. But you can donate to our small-scale operation if you wish so, because then you will know for sure that some good stuff was brought to people directly, because we bring all the stuff that we buy directly to people that need it and give them with our own hands. We normally try to make photos and post them on Facebook. Obviously, it doesn't prove anything. Probably we just found some guys and made photos with them. No, I'm kidding. If you want to donate to us, then probably do. I know it's not very nice to beg for money, but but here I am. But yes, there are trustable sources. I'm sure most of the people who joined us this conversation know about them. You can donate to many initiatives. About Red Cross, I just wanted to say a few words, not just about Rostov and how they opened, are trying to open their one of the headquarters there, whatever. In the city of Irpin, that saw heavy fighting. At certain points, a lot of Ukrainian volunteers were evacuating people, even under the shelling. This kind of small initiatives, just people driving their car, picking up people and drive in a way with them. Red Cross refused to do that because, well, it was dangerous, and obviously it was dangerous. I'm not trying to say no, it wasn't, and probably I personally wouldn't go there and evacuate people because I'm not so brave. But at the time, Irpin was a mess. But what I mean is, what I'm trying to say is that perhaps donating this kind of initiatives on the ground is a better idea than donating large-scale bureaucratic international organizations like Red Cross, because for many, many reasons that probably we will not discuss here, they are quite constrained in what they can do and can't do. They rely on green corridors, official green corridors, that don't really work well in Ukraine because of one country that starts with R and ends with A. So yes, if you want to donate, then probably donate. If it shouldn't be our initiative, just donate some kind of this kind of small scale initiatives on the ground. I think they do better than large international organizations, unfortunately. And I wanted to say something else, but I forgot what I want to say. But yes, and obviously, yes, you don't have to donate. You can push your representatives, for example, to do more, including military help. That is very important. Or pressure international companies like Nestle, or L'Oréal, Merlin, Auchan, and so on that refuse to go from the Russian market, with sometimes very interesting reasons not to do so, like Nestle saying that they are providing food, and food is a basic need of people, but obviously Nestle is not making that kind of food mostly, and most of the produce that most of the products that Nestle produces are not essential. But anyway, just yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do.
May I ask you to post information about how to send money, for example, for your course in the chat here, in Zoom chat?
Daphne, can you do this?
Yeah. Yes, I can do it a little bit like closer to the end of the event. I can just like post the info in the chat if you don't mind. But also just a quick comment, a quick addition to what Ivan has just said. I also wanted to say that I think like a lot of people, they can also like help like spread the right information, or how do I put it best? Because, well, when the war just started, I remember that I was really, really angry at a lot of Western media, because the tone that they were writing about the war in Ukraine, it was so fatalist. It was like so defeatist. It was like, oh, well, they are doomed to fail. Like, should we really like cover it? I mean, like really, like in 1 week, it will all be over. And, you know, like a journalist of like Kyiv Independent put it one day ago, like, today it is like a month since Kyiv was doomed to fall within 72 hours. And, you know, like we're still there, like we're still standing. So, you know, like the framing of this war really matters, because I'm sorry, but it really pissed me off when like 2 weeks after the full-scale invasion, some media, they continue to call it like, oh, like Ukraine crisis. And you're like, well, like it wasn't like Ukraine crisis to begin with, and it's definitely not Ukraine crisis like 2 weeks after the full-scale invasion, and like a lot of the cities have been bombed. But okay, yeah, okay, like we will remember that after the war. Like we will remember which sources we have to read and which sources we'll have like to double check, and which journalist I still have to yell at. Yeah, sorry.
I'll just add to what Ivan said about small-scale initiatives. So I have other friends who are also collecting money for basically the same purpose Ivan and Dafna do. So I can also share that link, and just to support this idea that, you know, so if people who are gathering money can be trusted, and that should do that, because that will definitely go directly to people on the ground, either in the military forces or territorial defense. Quite often, at least I know with other friends, I know with Dafna and Ivan, there are direct connections with people there, and then they, try to at least understand how many they need. Maybe they cannot cover them all, but when there are very specific people supporting very specific people, and that's just like general huge organizations doing that. So I'll just say that Ivan is right, and you should listen to him.
I agree. And now I'm opening the floor for our audience. You can ask your questions, you can comment on what you have heard. So please. Oksana Venek, please.
Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Ivan, Dafna, and Yaroslav. I have a question. Dafna just mentioned about Ukrainian, how the crisis, this discourse in media, but unfortunately, you can see this discourse even now in academia. And I read something from Oxford, some event, when they can't even bring themselves to mention Russia in the title. They just describe it as like some war in Ukraine or something like that. So it's just and there, I don't know how. I know that you probably don't have time to follow all this discussion in academia, but there is this. There was some discussion about how in future we should work with Russian institutions, whether we have to suspend all cooperation. And there was people who withdrew for very large conference, Katerina Ruban and a group of people withdrew their paper from the conference because organizers welcome Russian scholars from Russian institutions which publicly support, rectors or presidents of those institutions publicly support the war. So what do you think about is there also discussion about and people really offended that Ukrainians, Belarusian and Russian treat there are those scholarship where everyone treats us weak, all those people are treated as victims of war, not like Ukrainians as victims and Russians as political refugees, for instance, but all of them are in this whole big group of victims, and they're not victims of war actually. So do you follow this discussion? Do you have any thoughts? And yeah, I would be very interested because sometimes we are told here that we are not, we can't say people in Russian how they protest because we are here in North America. So we don't have moral, right to recommend people how they, what they do in Russia because they can endanger their life. So, but you are in Ukraine. So what I want to hear your opinion on that matter if you follow those discussions. Thank you.
I can start, or Ivan?
No, you go.
Okay. Yeah, I think definitely that scholars from Russian institutions should not be welcomed in the Western academia or internationally in general, because they are, I mean, not just victims, but also like Russian state education institutions right now, if you read the news, actually supporting everything the government is doing. So in one way or another, even if they are not in favor of the policy and the war, like in the Russian side and what they are saying, still they're part of that institution. And unfortunately, the same logic applies to the sanctions, that we are cutting Russia, and basically average Russians who are not necessarily supporting Russian government policy would suffer the same way. So I don't see why we should make an exception for academics. Sure, and they can leave and they can go to other countries. But if we support the logic that we are sort of trying to pressure Russia in every possible way with sanctions, and we are doing this, you know, why academia should be an exception to that. I mean, it's not the matter that, you know, they're Russians by nationality, so we are, you know, don't want to, you know, work with them and talk with them, but it's rather their affiliation with Russian state that's the problem. And there is like this joint effort to cut off all the ties, including academic. So in that regard, I would say that if you want to challenge logic that we should, you know, in one way or another communicate with Russian scholars, then you should question the whole logic of sanctions, and they are affecting average Russians. Then maybe we should, you know, reconsider that and bring more fundamental question: is it right policy to fight Russia? But so far, people are, from what I read, at least, maybe you can correct me, in the West, you know, academics, it's, you know, they're victims too, but, you know, then we are making this weird argument that academics are more victims than average Russians, who, like low-income Russians, who suffer the most from the sanctions, while people in academia will rather, you know, lose their connections and but still, you know, have the position, so they wouldn't be, you know, not that severely affected by the sanctions. So unfortunately, that's the way that we have to do, and people in Russia will suffer because of the decisions of their government. And if people want to still, I would say, support, I don't know, science or humanities, then they'll have to leave Russia and not be affiliated with the Russian state in any way. That's at least how I see it, but probably Ivan will say his opinion about it.
Well, I think the answer to this question really is connected to the bigger issues at hand. People normally talk about it in terms of responsibility. I'm not sure if this moralizing frame is very productive. People who know me probably know that I've been quite cynical. I had been quite cynical before the war, and I became even more cynical since. I think we have to think about it in utilitarian terms, in terms of what the situation at hand is and what we can do to stop it. And I mean, obviously, war. In this case, it's not a war of, I don't know, two classic examples of First World War, right? Two imperial powers or unions of imperial powers or whatever. It's a war of one large state that is obviously driven by some pseudo-historic imperial motivations to conquer other either territories or destroy people that are considered to be subhuman and sub-state, right? Not a real state. So the only way to stop this war is to somehow make the aggressor stop. We cannot, I always answer to this question in a way that neither Ukraine nor other states can bomb Moscow or Rostov like Dresden was bombed, right? Obviously, because Russia has nuclear power. the only alternative we have at hand is to destroy the economies that helps Russian army fight. This is a reality. It's quite a horrible reality, because I don't think we have to be blind to the fact that as a result, many Russians, including Russians that didn't support Putin, and even Russians that did support Putin, but probably don't deserve, I don't know if they do deserve, but whatever, it's irrelevant in my framework, will suffer, right? People will not have some important medical supplies, for example. This is a horrible reality. The alternative would be to bomb Rostov or Moscow, like, I don't know, Belgrade was bombed, or Dresden was bombed, or other cities in this world during the wars were bombed. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible reality. And that is really, this reality is tightly connected to Russian academic institutions. I don't think, I mean, people in Russian academic institutions who are not supporting the regime will suffer as a result of many sanctions and connections lost. But I'm sure that Russian state institutions, at least, and people who work in that state institutions, for one reason or another, in terms of this practical steps, have to be cut off from many connections, cut off from international community. At least if they don't explicitly protest against the war. And I know it's complicated in many ways. I don't think we have to be blind to that, but I don't see any other options. And to be fair, I also want to say that in Ukraine, I don't want to say that in Ukraine it's all ponies and everything is great everywhere. There is some xenophobia going on, right? Both inside the Ukraine against internally displaced people, and including xenophobia towards Russians. Quite explainable, but still there are some generalizations about Russians general, right? I know many people and even institutions that were honest, brave, in their reaction to this war, who were from Russia. Both personally, I have friends who are in Canada, for example, in Russia, who unequivocally support Ukraine, and tell us that, hey, my country invaded other country and started this war. I will not support my country. I will support Ukraine, and they donate to various initiatives, including our initiative, and even some of them donate to Ukrainian army. I don't have any issues with those Russians, right? This is not the ethnicity or whatever that is to blame, but at the same time, it is important to explain. And a few days ago, I had a talk. I was participated in a panel with some Americans who are not academically aligned. Probably I don't have to mention what was the initiative that organized it. And people started to reproduce this narrative that you can hear in many places, that this is just the war, Putin's war. This is not a war that Russians have to suffer for and whatever. And this is partly true, because obviously Putin's factor is very important. We saw that Russia's regime is a very personalized regime, where one person makes decisions. But at the same time, we don't have to forget that while not everybody in Russia supports this, there is a certain imperial sentiment that was driving what Putin said and was driving what Russia did, and is continuing to do it. We know it. We have been knowing it for a long time, starting from small things like language, right? Where You can hear na Ukraine and all these dismissive remarks. We know that there is a widespread sentiment among many Russians. I'm once again not saying so. There are two sides that are probably not right. One side that overgeneralizes the problem in Russian society and tries to make generalizations about all Russians. This is not a way we should go. The other side that denies that there is an imperial sentiment and denies a certain problem that goes beyond one person, Vladimir Putin, who made a decision to invade Ukraine. And that problem is that there is a widespread imperial sentiment among many Russians, not all, obviously, that we don't have to forget about. And this is a complex reality that we have to navigate somehow. And we have to constantly check ourselves, I think, not to drop into one of this non-rational absolute positions that either we say that it's one person and no one has to deal with the consequences except Vladimir Putin, or we say that all Russians are whatever responsible and have to suffer and are bad and whatever. There is this line that we have to thin line that we have to tread on. Yeah.
Thank you, Ivan. I see that Natalia Lazar would like to ask something. Please, Natalia.
Thank you, Larissa. Thank you, Ivan, Dafna, Yaroslav, everyone. You're doing a great work on the ground, and you probably know better situation because you also have connections with our Ukrainian colleagues. And my question is, okay, I work at the USHMM, United Holocaust Memorial Museum, and I do not represent this institution here right now. But one of the questions that we've been struggling with is how to help university faculty, researchers on the ground who for various reasons cannot flee abroad and still remaining in cities like Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv. So today we started some small program, but even this big institution, as big as it is, cannot do everything. So I was wondering, what's your opinion? What do you think is necessary to do? How can we help people who work in various universities across North America? What do you think is practical, pragmatic, doable? And I like these discussions about the Russian scholars, but I think we can start these discussions only after the war is over. It's my personal opinion again. And of course, it's up to Russians first, what they want to do and how they want to help themselves. You cannot be helped if you don't want that help. So it's up to Russian academia and researchers to do. But the pressing, urgent matter is how we can help those who are still in Ukraine. And once again, thank you for your work. It was very, very interesting discussion. Thank you, everyone.
I think that I'll just can copy paste it into our chat box, because my friend who is writing these endless letters to different institutions to support other people what to do, she made like I think 8 points to pay attention to, and then to then to deal with a specific situation and be sensitive to that. But I think another thing important to remember that if we talk about scholars, probably we're talking about female scholars who can leave, because men cannot leave unless they are over 60. So either you're helping senior scholars if they're male, or we're talking about women. So that's another thing. So I'll just copy paste these points that my friend made that can be useful. But maybe if we're talking about male scholars, they probably will stay here, and the best option for them is just to move them to safer zones, and then, I don't know, make a fund for Ukrainian scholars if they continue their work. And I think that's something, sounds right now very abstract, but that's another sort of dimension. If you want to help it on the academic university level and with these academic institutions and keep them in Ukraine, at least preserve in some way or another. So you should think not only about moving them abroad and helping them to stay, but also there is a significant part of people that cannot leave. And in that case, you have to adjust their work in Ukraine. That's another dimension that maybe this institution have to think about. But yeah, I'll just copy paste this information my friend wrote, and that's comment about that dimension, about which I don't have any specific things to say, just also to keep in mind.
Sorry, I just wanted to add a brief comment that, well, for me, I don't know, these past months, it has been in exercise in like becoming more humble, learning also like more humility and like the limits of your own agency. And I understand that like we all want to help, but sometimes like the help, unfortunately, the help that we can provide, it is like, it's very limited due to some like unfortunate and like unforeseen circumstances. And about the help that we can provide to scholars who are for some reason still like in the cities that are being intensively shelled, like Sumy or Chernihiv, it may be some like small scale help, like bringing them some equipment and helping maybe like those scholars to leave maybe not the country, but maybe like moving to a next safer city from where they can like resume their work, at least like a part of their work. And I know that like some people at Indiana and like other universities, for instance, they have been like collecting different equipment like tablets, computers and stuff like that for the Kharkiv Institute, for the Karazin Institute that was evacuated from Kharkiv to Poltava. And I think that while this war lasts, while cities like Sumy, Chernihiv, Kherson, they're being attacked and they're being like actively destroyed, like the best thing that so far we can do for these people is just like helping them move to the next like safer city, like go to the city of their choice, and like providing them with the equipment that they need to continue their work. Yeah. Sorry if this was a worthless comment.
It's very useful. Thank you.
Yes, it was a very useful comment. Thank you very much, Dafna. And Yaroslav has already posted in the chat, and from what I can see, those points are very, very reasonable, and they probably we should think about maybe writing an official letter maybe to the university and explaining what should be changed and why. I'm not sure that it will help, but we can try. Do we have other questions or comments? Ruslana Kozienko, please.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. Just briefly, I'm also a second-year PhD student. I'm from Central European University, the American university which used to be in Budapest in Hungary and which is now in Vienna in Austria. Fortunately, because this year I was doing my fieldwork, I'm also an anthropologist, and fortunately I was in Ukraine because of my fieldwork. I say fortunately because that way I was able to evacuate my family, otherwise I'm sure they wouldn't leave probably. Yeah, I just wanted to add to what everyone just said about how people can help other people within academia. And what I'm going to say is drawn both on my own experience as an academic person on experience of my friends from academia, but also on different experiences of my friends from our art and culture field, because we share certain similarities. I mean, academia shares certain similarities with people from the field of art and culture. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's really great. It has been really great to see how many opportunities popped up in the last month for people in academia abroad. But I think we should be always conscious about the fact that mostly, like, those people who are able to use those opportunities are mostly women. And I think there is a huge need to create opportunities especially for men who are staying in Ukraine now. And I mean both men who are scientists, but also men who are who work in art and culture, because I mean there are a lot of similarities, especially this regime, like life regime of working with different grants. They have the same, like when you work as as a composer or an artist, you basically live from a grant to grant, you constantly apply for this or that. But like a very pragmatic, just a very pragmatic comment that I think that works for both scientists and artists, that what is asked in exchange for this kind of support, I don't know, like, to be honest, at this point, I'm even not sure what can be asked in exchange, because sometimes even those few grants which are available in Ukraine, for which people, like mostly men in Ukraine, can apply, what they ask in exchange, it's just ridiculous in the situation in which people find themselves right now in Ukraine. It's not much. Sometimes it's just to provide a report of the ways that the money was spent. But to be honest, in that situation, not everyone can provide that. And I think people, like those institutions which can help, should be very sensible and sensitive about what people can actually provide. And they should be conscious about the fact that those are not development grants, or those are survival grants. And they shouldn't function according to this capitalist logic of exchange. They should be just given to the people to survive. And unfortunately or fortunately, just that's it, because some of them, especially those who are internally displaced and who are not in their homes, maybe they don't have a computer to write that report. And like exactly what Dafna said, that maybe it should be like computers or other tablets provided to the people. So yeah, and again, to touch briefly upon what can be done, even more can be done for students, Ukrainian students, first of all, in academia, who were able to move abroad. I think this kind of, I mean, in my case, I've experienced amazing amount of support, first of all from my department on the departmental level, but also on the personal level. Like, my professors are absolutely amazing people. But I think not all universities or all like higher administration understand that one-time support is not what students from Ukraine need. And to be honest, encountering the suggestions of one-time support almost humiliating and offensive to me personally, because when you are offered, I don't know why, 500 euros, you think, okay, what should I ask them for? Should I ask them for my mother-in-law medication, or should I ask them for my food? Or it just, yeah, those things are sometimes not thought through, unfortunately. So I think what should be done should provide more structure on which people, like students, can rely upon in this like very unsettling times. And those things cannot be like one-time support, and they should provide at least some certainty, because, and these concerns, again, both people who are now in Ukraine and abroad, I think Western institutions should understand that even at this point, not everyone is capable mentally or physically to just come back to work again. I mean, academic work just right away and start writing and reading just because you're not in that kind of mental state. So I think this kind of understanding should be included in that kind of support that is provided, because there should be some time gap which is given to those people who just to come back to their minds and thoughts and just come back to work again, and don't expect them to be able to, I don't know, evacuate from Ukraine today and be able to come back to work to tomorrow, just because this is not what's happening. Yeah, but otherwise, I just wanted to thank everyone, because I think the amount of support, at least and maybe my bubble is facing, is just amazing. So, but please be mindful of those things, because just to channel the support in the way it is the most useful. Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you to Ruslana for what she said, and add a little bit on the intersection of gender and class. You know well, probably, that men from 18 to 60 are not allowed to leave Ukraine. And this will be another story about how, despite incredible solidarity and volunteering and many super insightful things that, super amazing things that happened in Ukraine after the full-scale invasion, there are not so pleasant stories as well. And one of the stories is on the intersection of gender and class. When I went to a military office, Vizkomat, right, to register in Uzhhorod, in conversations with many men who were waiting on the street as well, because we were all waiting on the street for hours, I understood that there is a certain trap for many people in Ukraine, and by people I mean men of certain age, IDPs. IDPs are in certain regions of the country, and this is not a pleasant story. IDPs, male IDPs, are required to go to military offices before local men go to military offices. And at the same time, in those regions of the country, men, right, are not allowed to leave. They're required to go to military offices. And at the same time, there is a lack of housing, because there are so many IDPs, internally displaced people, and many governmental and city organizations refuse to provide housing to men. So some of the men I talked to near the military office, they told me that essentially they became homeless. They are not allowed to leave the country. They have to stay in the city and wait for hours and days to get into the military office. There are horrible queues. And at the same time, they cannot get any housing. And obviously, this is an intersection of gender and class, because I would say that Ivan, me, Yaroslav, and Dafna are quite privileged, as not everybody, but many of the people who at certain point went to Western Academy. We have some kind of connections, we know languages, we are helped by a network of people. We are, for example, paid in Canadian or American dollars, right, that didn't lose the value, and so on and so on. And I didn't have troubles with finding shelter. Yaroslav didn't have troubles with finding shelter, but many men who are not that well connected, who don't have networks who support them, and who don't have money, and who have to rely on city or governmental programs that provide shelter for IDPs, they essentially became homeless in Zakarpattia, for example, and Lviv region, right? And I don't think it's a pleasant story. it's a gendered story. It's a class story, because obviously people who have money, they would just rent, they can just rent housing, right? But people whom I talked to, they couldn't, and they were left out by city and governmental programs because they were men. And this is a situation that has to be changed. This doesn't help Ukraine at all. I'm sure Ukrainians, this war would benefit much more if either some of those men would be allowed abroad to leave the country, or they would be provided with sufficient help. Because I'm not sure if it helps anyone if a person essentially becomes homeless. So yes, thank you for Svetlana for mentioning a gendered aspect of this situation. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ivan. We have a question from Ralph Rachetsky in the chat, and he asks, Ivan, can you tell us a bit more about how changes in the cost of housing in Uzhhorod and how the situation with homeless men? Do landlords refuse to rent to men more just as they rent prices? What are local authorities doing or not doing about this? How the situation with homeless IDP men is evolving? And I also need to say that this is going to be our last question, because unfortunately we have to finish this meeting. So, Ivan, can you answer this question?
I'm not sure I have all the answers. This is not the topic that I know much about, right? This is more of a, should I say, insight that doesn't sound well in this case. This is just a things that I understood when I actually went and spoke to a bunch of men near the military office. Mm-hmm. I know that the services, this is explicitly said to those men that cities that provide housing to IDPs, for example, in Uzhhorod, I heard the same about Lviv, but don't quote me on this. Many services are refused. Many city services are not provided for men explicitly. They are provided for explicitly. Men are told that they are for women and children and elderly, and men from 18 to 60, precisely the group that is not allowed to leave the country, are left out. I'm not sure how the situation is evolving. I honestly would be surprised, to be fair, and once again, this is a dark note, if it got better. I assume it could get better because more or less the big wave of IDPs already settled. There are small waves right now, so maybe the situation with housing got better. But from what I've heard from many of our friends who were looking for a place to stay in western regions of the country, it is hard to find housing. Many people, not everybody. Once again, there is a wide variety of behaviors here, but some people tried to use, once again, not the best, the dark side of everything that's going on. Hike the prices, or refuse to rent out places to people with, once again, about that puppy, for example, for people with animals, right, in that situation, essentially pushing those people to somehow drop those animals somewhere because they cannot find housing, or refuse to rent to men, or refuse to rent to people who have addictions, for example. We didn't talk about it, and this is more of a, Dafna can talk more about it because her research is related to that. So there is a lot of stigmatized groups who are vulnerable. In this case, men and other people, because they are stigmatized generally, and they cannot find, for example, people with addictions, right? Or those can be men, or if they're men with addictions, then it will be hard for you to find a place to rent, even if you have money. and it will be hard for you to find a place, a shelter from the city services if you fit into one of those categories, or if you are on the intersection of those categories. For example, once again, have an addiction, young man, and whatnot. This is hard for those people, and we have to talk about it. We don't have to say that everything is good in Ukraine, because that doesn't help the fight.
And,
So I will quickly add to that. It's just like to give you some, I don't know, like some comparison of how like some people in Lviv, for instance, hike the prices for the apartments. If before the war, you could rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Lviv for, I don't know, $350 a month or something like that. Now people consider that renting the same apartment for like $800 is a good deal in Lviv. And like there are a lot like more like apartments, like 1-bedroom apartments, like being offered for $1,000 or for like $1,300 a month, which is completely unreal for a lot of Ukrainian families to pay. And also there are some strings attached, so to say, like coming with the lease agreement that you're willing to sign, because like some of the landlords, when they are renting to families that have men aged 18 to 60, that these like men that can be like technically conscripted, the landlords are saying essentially that, okay, like we will rent, some landlords, okay, like I don't want to say that like every landlord is doing this, but it's not a like single case, but that there is a certain tendency that basically landlords are saying that like, okay, yes, we will rent you this apartment, but we demand that the guy will go to the military district office, like receive like all the papers and basically like show us all these papers, which is like technically like illegal, because as a landlord, you cannot really demand that. But when the apartments are in such a short supply that people are considering basically like every apartment like a steal deal, even if they have like to sell a kidney in order to be able to rent it. Like, wow, also like definitely tells you something about the atmosphere.
And just a small note on that local authorities do realize that, there is no place. So there was a few days ago, I think, announced that they are building temporarily housing for people to live. I don't know the scale, the numbers. And also there is sort of lukewarm attempts to fight the rising prices. I don't know, at least in case of Uzhgorod, I heard it, I think 2 or 3 times that the local mayor said, please don't rise the prices, be humane, don't do that. But I haven't heard that they went, I don't know, in any kind of measures to stop, to lower the prices. So, I mean, there is talk about it, and, some understanding that we should do something about it, this houses and its announcements, but definitely no public talk about men and that we should solve this issue. It's more like Ivan said, private conversation, but I haven't heard that someone publicly said that, no, we should also accommodate men, because here in Western Ukraine, there is this prejudice against IDPs, sometimes expressed by the local authorities, like mayor of neighboring city of Mukachevo to Uzhgorod. In the first day said that, those male coming here, they are, they shouldn't feel like they're at home. They should understand their place, something like that. So, and I heard a lot of stories, people, saying as rumors, oh, I've heard about those people getting drunk and doing nothing, or stories that, they call the police. So that's, there is prejudice here against IDPs, and it's actually hard to bring that issue of men who are, in public perception that, should be defenders. So that's a problem that's not discussed right now, just to add to that dark side that Ivan started.
Yes, Mayor of Ivano-Frankivsk also said that IDPs have to respect local customs, which is obviously another way of expressing kind of xenophobia towards a group of people. It has been used in Ukraine against foreign people, let's say like this, various ethnic groups before, but these days it's used, the same rhetoric is used against IDPs, right? They're from another region, they're, for example, are not, he explicitly said about a custom of going to the church every Sunday. According to him, this is yes, anyway, and he obviously, the contrast was that those people from the east and central Ukraine, they are not that religious as we are, right? That was what he was trying to say, and obviously he was trying to divide, right, Ukrainians essentially into people who know the right customs of going to church on Sundays, and those people from other regions of Ukraine that are not religious enough. So yes, there is that. I wouldn't overestimate the scale of that. I wouldn't say that the problem is like enormous. But at the same time, I don't think it's productive to just close our eyes and say, hey, this thing doesn't exist. It exists, and I'm not sure if, I think we are far enough from talking about scholars anymore, but maybe that's one of the things that we have to get from this conversation, is that sometimes we probably have to think about non-scholars, because many non-scholars can be less privileged than at least many scholars who are connected to Western academic institutions, like in this case, Yaroslav, me, and Dafna.
Thank you very much, Ivan, Dafna, and Yaroslav, for this wonderful conversation, and is that you agreed to take part in this meeting. I can only wish you to stay safe, first of all, and healthy, and success in your volunteering work. And well, let's just hope that the war will end as soon as possible, and we will be back to more normal life, and you will be able to continue your research, not being disappointed in academia. And for those who joined our today's event, please follow our NTSH page on Facebook. I will announce the next event as soon as possible. And I hope we will have a next conversation with the Ukrainian intellectuals very soon, maybe next week, but I cannot promise this because it depends if those people will be available or will be able to join us, because they are in Ukraine and the situation is not, well, you know what the situation is. So thank you very much. Yes. And Slava Ukraini, we stand with Ukraine, and all our thoughts with Ukraine are with Ukraine. Bye.